Since we have learned about Python modules, now let's understand how to group modules into something called as packages. Now here is a very nice diagram which explains us the relationship between modules and sub-packages and packages, right? Here each of them, so suppose I have a game, right? Suppose I have sub-packages like sound, image and some game levels, right? So for each of these sub packages, imagine I have these modules. These are modules, right? Modules are basically Python.py files in which I have some functions or classes or other data types that I want to reuse, right? So here in sound, I have three modules. Each of them is a module, right? Each of them is a module. Now similarly, these are three modules that I have in image. These are three modules I have in my level. Now for Python to consider anything as a package, it needs to have this file. It needs to have the underscore underscore init underscore underscore dot py file, right? If this, so again, these are all directory structures, right? Here what I have is I have a directory called game. Within this directory, I have my init.py and I also have a folder called sound. Within my folder sound, I have these images. So this is the directory structure. Okay. So remember, this is the directory structure. Okay. This is how my folders and files. So this is a folder. Similarly, this is a folder. This is a folder. Similarly, this is a folder. And rest of all of them are files. So this is a folder and this is a subfolder. So you can think of packages in Python as basically folders. Okay, intuitively, if you want to think about it that way. And modules are nothing but .py files. The most important thing is for Python to consider any folder as a module, it needs to have, so for example, for Python to consider this folder, okay, let me erase some, for Python to consider this folder as a package, it could have multiple files, it could have subfolders, all of them, but it certainly needs to have the init file. Similarly, for Python to consider this as a package, it needs to have an init file. For Python to consider this as a package, it needs to have the init file. Without init file in a folder, Python would not consider that as a package. Now, what goes into the init file? So in the init file, sometimes you can leave it empty, or you can have some startup code. Okay, you can have some simple initialization code. So for example, for game package, suppose if I want to load some files, so some initialization code could be load some files or declare some variables, right, or some constants. Okay, so if I want to do all of these operations, I can do it in the .py file. But even if you leave it empty, it's perfectly okay. Python will work with that, right? Now the question is this. Imagine if I have all my modules and packages in this format. Again, do not forget that a package here is nothing but the folder name. The folder name here is game. The folder name here is sound, image, and level, and these are all file names. As long as a folder contains the init file, Python will think of it as a package. Now, if I want to load, let's say, any one function here. Okay, so for example, image open. Okay, let's look at this function. Okay, suppose if I want to load this module, how do I load this specific module? Because this is the whole thing, right? This is the whole structure. This is a whole folder structure. If I want to just load this file, or if I want to just load this module to be specific, how do I do that? It's using the dotted notation. It's very, very simple. I can say import. Sorry, it's a typo here. It's supposed to be game.image.open. So what I'm saying here, that my first package name is called game. Game contains a sub package or a subfolder called image, right, which has a module called open. That's what I'm saying, which is exactly the structure that you see here, right? So we have a folder called game, which has a folder called image, which has a folder called open, which has a file called open. So this is a package because of the init file. This is a package because of the init file, and this is a .py file, and hence it's a module. Okay, so packages are nothing but They are ways of organizing your Python modules into a directory structure. That's all they are. Very, very simple idea. Packages are basically groups of modules. If you have a lot of modules which you want to logically group them into folders, just the way you sort your files in various folders. Exactly the same idea from a programmatic standpoint, except that everything stays the same. We will use packages and the dotted notation a lot because we are going to use a lot of packages built by other programmers for machine learning and data science. So you will come across this type of dotted notation a lot throughout this course whenever we see code examples.